What's going on, guys? Hope you're doing well. Before this video starts, I want to ask you guys to please subscribe to the channel and also to turn on your notifications so that you don't miss an upload. And also that if you do enjoy this video, please be sure to leave a like. That makes a big difference in helping this channel grow. So yeah, I would greatly appreciate it. But with that being said, I want to talk about something interesting that I watched earlier today. The Malice at the Palace documentary. People have been talking about it for a while now. It's been out for a few weeks now, but I just got around to watching it, and I have thoughts because it's a very interesting documentary. And you know, last year when The Last Dance came out, all those episodes, I kind of did a review each episode, and I kind of want to do that with this documentary because it was just so fascinating, especially because this happened in I believe 2004, and I was obviously not around watching basketball. I was very, very young, and I didn't even understand the concept of basketball. I didn't grow into basketball until just a few years after, so I didn't really understand how big of a deal this was and just how wild the whole situation was. Because I've video many times on YouTube, but I feel like it's different me watching it on YouTube years later compared to what it was like at that time in the moment watching it. I can't even begin to think what it would have been like. Like, imagine if social media was around when that happened. Like, imagine if that happened in 2021 when we had social media. It would have been unbelievable. The jokes, the memes, the reactions, it would have been out of control. So just, you know, getting to watch it and get an idea of what it was like, especially from the player's perspective, it was very interesting. Because obviously when this happened, it was obviously a big deal because it was obviously seen as a very negative thing. It was a bad look for the NBA. David Stern brought down all these harsh penalties. The media went berserk about it, and that's what I first wanted to talk about. Like, the media reaction to it was actually like how bad, how blatant they were with like the racist undertones they had, because the word that they kept using was thug. Like, these guys are just a bunch of thugs, a bunch of hip-hop loving thugs who don't know how to act professionally, and all they want to do is fight. Like, it was so blatant at the time, and I'm like, did no one like say anything? Because obviously in 2021, if a news anchor had said that and blamed hip-hop for the reason that they're acting aggressive, it would have been a big deal, rightly so. But I mean, I guess in 2004 it was just not a big deal because it was just so wild how blatant it was, like the racist undertones that the media used, right? But we never understood the player's perspective. Like, what led to it? What was going through their minds? What was their feelings at the time and while it was all happening? Like, hearing Steven Jackson talk about not just that team and the way that the fight went down, but also how it impacted their team. Because the documentary basically comes from the Pacers' perspective and how, like, you know, the team assembled and how that team came to be with Steven Jackson, Ron Artest, Reggie Miller, and then, you know, how they were, and Jermaine O'Neal, and also how, you know, that basically was supposed to be the time where they were a contender, a very good team in the East. Excuse me, that was supposed to be contending with Detroit. And then, you know, it was a good team, all-stars and all that stuff. And then that fight happens, and then it basically, like, puts them in a bad spot because of all of the suspensions and all of that stuff. It basically ruined their season. So it was just like interesting to watch how Ron Artest, because Ron Artest gets a really bad rep, and I kind of understand why, because he's done some questionable things, but at the same time he's been very vocal about his mental health, and he talked a lot about it in the documentary. Like, his mental was not at the right spot at that time. He was going through a lot, taking days off, doing things that he probably shouldn't have done, but, you know, he was going through a lot at the time. And it was interesting to hear him say that, because that's not something that gets talked about a lot, the player's perspective. And it never does with any situation, and especially this one, because of how viral it is, and because it's just seen as a interesting. What else? Steven Jackson, I mean, he has a podcast, and he's talked about it a bunch of times, but hearing him talk about how he was kind of hurt that it went down the way it did, and then how the suspensions went down, and how the team really never gelled after that, and how it kind of ruined the Pacers and their opportunity that they had to be a really good team. Reggie Miller was actually really interesting because he talked about how that basically was near the end of his career, and then that fight breaks down, and then he retires at the end of the year, which was fascinating to watch. How he talked about how he really wanted this team to be the one that takes the Pacers, towards the championship, and he thought this team was going to be the one that did it because they had so many talented guys on that team. But this one fight basically, not just ruined the Pacers season, but it led to the end of Reggie Miller's career, and that's just wild to think about how that one event changed that. It's crazy to think about. And Reggie Miller, obviously, he had a great career, and he played so many years with that one organization. So for him, you can tell, just hearing him talk about the retirement and all that, you can tell it still hurts him. The fact that he stayed with that organization for so long and he was never able to deliver. And the way that it ended was just, I can't even imagine how heartbreaking it must have been for him. But hearing those three guys was, their backgrounds, their mindsets about the fight, and then hearing Jermaine O'Neal. I mean, I think talking about people I feel bad for, Jermaine O'Neal, man, because his reputation was, he talked about it, he was never the same after that one fight, because he was a young up-and-comer in the league, one of the top recruits, goes to Indiana with the chance to compete and win games. He's an all-star, and he's this young guy who everyone says is going to be that next guy, who's going to be the face of the league, going to be a superstar in this league one day, because he's young. But then that fight happens, and then what happens after that, Does he become an all-star again after that? Maybe once or twice. But is he seen as that guy again? No. Because that fight ruined it. The way he reacted, the way he, got into it in that situation, especially that one kick he had towards that fan, where he kind of did a jump kick in a way, or a running punch. That was an interesting way to look at it, because it was towards a fan, and if that, he missed by a few inches. He missed that fan barely. If that running punch hit that fan, and Reggie Miller said it, if that punch landed, that fan would have been dead on the spot. Because you don't mess with a 6'7", 280-pound whatever. You don't do that. So it was very interesting to see how that went down. And then the fight itself, people felt disrespected, because we always talk about how the players are the ones who were at fault for the fight, but then, how did the fight get worse? Because at first, Ben Wallace gets a hard foul, and then they kind of shove and talk smack a little bit, but then nothing else happens after that, Ben Wallace and Jermaine O'Neal get into it, Ron Artest gets into it a little bit, all the other guys, they kind of get into it. It's a little bit of a scuffle, but nothing happens, Ron Artest is just chilling on the, I don't know what you call that, the bleacher thing, and he's just there chilling until a fan throws a bottle. It directly hits him, and then Ron Artest, rightly so, is angry and pissed about it, and he chases the fan. Unfortunately, he gets after the wrong guy, and Steven Jackson comes in and gets the wrong guy. That was a very unfortunate thing, but that happens in the moment kind of thing. And then also, Ron Artest comes down from the bleachers, and then some random fan walks up and tries to swing with him. He gets into a fighting stance. What are you doing? You're some random jackass in a Detroit Pistons jersey, thinking that you can just walk on the court and start getting into it with players. Ron Artest almost punched him in the face, rightly so. And then they talked to that fan in the documentary, and he was like, "Oh, I felt disrespected. I was a loyal fan to the Pistons. I had season tickets, and it felt kind of soft that they banned me and got my tickets revoked and all that stuff. It just felt soft." And I'm like, dude, you dumbass. You started the fight. You got on the court because fans have that entitlement feeling where because they spend money, they think that they can do whatever to the players. Just because you spend money to buy tickets to these games doesn't mean you can do that. Let's look at these recent playoffs for an example. The spitting at Trae Young, the popcorn throwing at Westbrook, the racial slurs at Kyrie Irving. People feel this way. It's still a problem 17 years later where fans feel entitled just because they bought tickets that they could say or do whatever to the players. It's something that has to change, and it's sad that it's still happening all these years later, but at that time, you know, that jackass was still thinking, hey, I was in the right. You know, he got what he deserved, and, you know, kudos to that one district attorney who was, you know, not just going with the wind and with what the media and all the, you know, leaders were saying, because they were all just blaming the players and saying they were the ones in the wrong. But he was like, no, what led to the players getting out of control? And then he investigated the video, and then he did a months-long search to find the guy who threw the bottle. Like, that's respectable, I think, you know, to look at it from that perspective. And even though obviously the media is going to be very against that because they wanted to just blame the players, and, you know, the media wanted to do that because they wanted to drive a narrative that these players, who are mostly black, are crazy and you can't control them, and then it's all, you can blame their hip-hop culture and all that stuff and the gang violence and all that crap for why they act so aggressive. Like, that was what they were doing. So, you know, for it to pan out the way it did in that investigation, for them to, you know, get the guy who threw the bottle, I mean, you know, that's respectable, I guess. But yeah, this documentary was fascinating, and if you haven't watched it already, I highly recommend you do. It's called Untold: Malice at the Palace. It's on Netflix, and it's about an hour long, but it's very good. So yeah, if you haven't already, I recommend you watch it. I loved it. Yeah, that's basically it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy, please be sure to leave a like and comment down below what you think about this documentary. If you have seen it, what are your thoughts on it? I'm curious to hear what you guys think. And if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel and also turn on your notifications so that you don't miss an upload. And that's basically it. Thank you guys for your support, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.